Welcome to the Myth and Magic Authors Podcast, folklore and fantasy topics aimed at creative storytellers. To write stories and challenge your brain with exciting ideas, delve into these presentations and reflections. See how fantasy realms are based on actual world history, legend, and lore. Study fairy tales, nature fables, and supernaturalism to engage in a jumble of concepts that will trigger your fancy and get you writing imaginatively. Now, here's your host, Neil Mack.
Hello, fantasy fiction fans, and welcome to Myth and Magic, another episode of the podcast specially created for fantasy fiction authors. In a little while, I'm going to talk about therianthropy, and you might be saying to yourself, oh yes, of course, I understand what that is. It's the ability, of course, to shift or shapeshift from human to animal and vice versa. Therianthropy is how we explain a frog to prince change. We also to talk about werewolves, which is lycanthropy, and we have encountered therianthropy when we've seen the wolf turn into the grandmother in the Red Riding Hood story, and of course the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story. But that word, and there's lots of other scientific words that are a little bit beyond us, but that word is used as a scientific explanation for a magical effect. And what I've tried to do, and I'm going to put this on my blog at neilmach.me, neilmach.me, I'm going to put a list of every kind of magic I can think of and the scientific word. But I've got an alpha list for this, and please forgive my pronunciations, but I'm going to try to pronounce the scientific word as well. These words you may have come across before, but sometimes you may not have. And if you've got any other magical ideas and the scientific word to go with it, please let me know by tweeting me at neilmach, neilmach, and I'll add it to my alpha list. But here goes. The first one is agathademoning, and it's asking good spirits to do our bidding. Alchemy, to change the fundamental substance of elements or matter. Angel speak, communicating with lesser deities and messengers, in other words, angels. Apotropaism and countercharms. You might have heard me talk about apotropaic magic before. It's defence against demons and ghosts and evil sorcerers. Apportation or bilocation, you can use either word, is the psychic ability to be in two places or more at once. Astral projection is to travel beyond the living realm and into other dimensions, though astral travel is to leave a mortal body and enter the universe as a free spirit. Astrology, you will definitely know, is charting or predicting future events by studying signs in the heavens or in the stars. Cocodemony is appeasing bad spirits and provoking good spirits. Chaldean meteorology is to change or improve the weather. This was done even quite recently in World War II, where they would call in a Chaldean meteorologist to change or improve the weather before a battle. Hamingyan, which is Hamingjan, fortune. Hamingyan fortune is to change or improve one's chances. We all do this when we blow on a dice before we throw a dice. Chronomancy is to choose the right time or the right day or the right date to do something. Enchantment, obviously we know, it's to trigger desired effects in others using trances or spells. Enochian communication is talking with demons, elementals and angelic beings. Exorcism, we know well, is healing demonic possession. Faith healing is the miraculous healing of people by laying of hands. And fate control is providing or taking away general luck or good or bad fortune from somebody. Genethology, predicting the future of a newborn. Glossolalia is speaking in tongues or translating words that have been spoken in tongues. Haemony, which is Haemony, is to heal or to cure or perform wonders with magical herbs. Haruspication, Haruspication, is interpreting omens and signs. And invisibility, which we know is to disappear or to use cloaks or make a vanished person or an entity appear or disappear. Psychokinetic control, which you'll know, is to subvert a dominant worldly power using supernatural means. Jinxing and hexing, which you'll also be familiar with, is placing or removing curses. Levitation, which was used quite a lot by monks and saints, is the power of flight or levitation. It's also what a witch would use to fly on a broomstick. Magical entrapment is freeing a person or an entity or trapping a person or an entity in a magic spell or within something magical. Magical exoticness is to gain or use supernatural powers, so Superman is magically exotic. Metamorphosis is turning from human archetype to superhero or angel or demon. Necromantic projection is to travel into death. Oneo-criticism, which is ONEIROCRITICISM, is to decipher or interpret dreams. Perceptionism is to gain or use supernormal, otherworldly or other magical and exotic senses. Post-cognition is perceiving past events as if one was actually there by travelling back astrally. Predestination is to improve wealth and opportunity or remove wealth and opportunity using magical means. And prophecy is, of course, reading the future. Psychokinesis is influencing or moving solid objects and matter without any physical interaction. And psychokinetic teleportation is moving or displacing objects or matter by using just thought control or mind control. Psychoscopy, PSYCHOSCOPY, is the ability to obtain information about a person or an object just by touching it. Purification is making or using spells to purify or cleanse a sinful heart or a sinful soul. Pyrokinesis controlling or pyrokinetic controlling is commanding flames or bringing about fire with just thoughts. Revenge magic is winning fights and providing strength to a weaker side or sapping the strength of the enemies with magic. This was done by Moses when he parted the Red Sea to trap the Egyptian army. Runecraft is reading or translating mystical runes. Skyomancy, which is SCIOMANCY, is talking with ghosts. Spellcrafting is making or brewing love spells and protecting others from love spells. Suffumigation, SUFFUMIGATION, is sending messages into heaven by smoke or with flames. And talismanism is to create or use magical signs, cures and amulets. Telepathy, which you'll know, is vicarious communication without any physical interaction. And lastly, therianthropy, the ability to shapeshift from human to animal or vice versa. So there's your scientific terms for magic. So let's talk therianthropy. But it's best to break it down. So if you break it down in Greek, it's therion, Therion, which is wild beast, and anthropos, which is human. So for many fantasy fiction authors, therianthropy means raging werewolves, murderous human-beast hybrids, similar to the Mr. Hyde that I mentioned earlier, or magical shape-shifting creatures, or malformed humanoids, or transformations from into prince. But the voluntary change from human to beast has been an exciting and an enticing means of escape and means of exploration and even means of liberation for humans since the earliest Stone Age societies. Plus, it's a great way for you, the fantasy author, to connect to amazing other worlds without having to enter into any phantasmagorical or fanciful rabbit holes of delusion. In fact, therianthropy can and is performed by most of us, if not all of us, and I'll explain that in a moment, and it's a natural part of our shared human experience. So what precisely is it? The word, at least in ancient Greek terms, the way I've just explained it, meant to become a human beast or interchangeably to become a beastly human. But the word also implies this metamorphic transformation. In other words, morphing from one state to another. So I think it's important to underline this metamorphic transformation that goes on. The earliest examples of the human transformation from human into bestial form comes to us from a cave painting that was created at least 13,000 years ago in a cave in southwestern France. The cave is known as the Three Brothers. This special cave contains several engravings of human beasts, but perhaps the most famous is the so-called dancing sorcerer, which is a portrayal of a half man and half deer, or it might be man and bison or man and antelope. The jury is still out on that. But when you examine the ancient engraving, and I'll put it on my show notes at neilmach.me, it will remind you of what a neo-pagan shaman might do, or a shaman of old might do in tribal ceremonies, because we know that a shaman will adopt and dramatise the guise of a wild creature to commune with the spirit world, to communicate with demons and angels and deities, or to treat disease, or to go on a vision-seeking quest, or to undertake some other form of divination, in other words, predicting the future. You'll have seen, of course, examples or images of witch doctors, and they will be dressed in furs, and perhaps they'll have their headdress and their headdress will have antlers or wings. And this type of shaman is frequently enlisted by this kind of tribe that hunt and follow a particular animal species, because don't forget, some tribes rely on just one animal for all of their food, all their tools, all their clothing, etc. So, for example, the Sami people in Finland and the North Europe, they rely on reindeer, and they follow reindeer. And the indigenous people of the Great Plains in North America, they once relied on bison. Now, if the tribe's beast, the one animal that it relies on, becomes scarce, obviously it's a scary thing for the tribe. And there was a belief that releasing the souls of the dead animals would also free the herds of living and breathing animals, so they might be hunted again. And that's why the shaman in those kind of tribes would generally dress up as the favourite game animal of the tribe. So, for example, the bison, the antelope or the deer. More disturbing, though, perhaps for us, is that the shaman might dress up and therefore take on the aggressive role of a fierce alpha predator, perhaps a wolf or a leopard or a lion. And he'd do this to claim supremacy over the hunted game, or sometimes even to claim a conquest over a rival tribe. In some cultures, there's a belief that invisible stories can only be seen when a person assumes an animal body. And these shamans, the shamans who see these invisible stories, are frequently called skinwalkers. You might have come across this term before. They're the people with a supernatural ability to turn into any animal they wish, as long as they first use the skin of the chosen animal, which is worn in most cases over human skin. This is a perspective that I think will interest you as a writer of fantasy fiction, and it's an idea that shapes modern ideas around animal cosplay, which you've probably come across. Some animals, even in their earthly and physical forms, are seen as especially enlightened, as enlightened spirits. And this is true, I think, of the eagle, and also the snake, the jaguar, cat, and the rat. So, for example, if a tribe asked their shaman to see beyond a mountain range, and into a very remote valley that they can't get to, then a shaman might take the shape of an eagle, usually in an ecstatic trance and frequently after taking a shed load of mood-enhancing psychoactive substances, and also after he's or she has put on a headdress of feathers, so that the shaman will be able to fly into the valley to see the hidden things for themselves and report back to the tribe. If it was necessary to infiltrate a very small place, perhaps a warehouse or a grain barn owned by the enemy tribe, then the shaman could take the form of a rat to climb into holes and search for treasure in confined spaces. Or if it were necessary to counter a dangerous, dominant, invisible spirit, the shaman could take the form of a wolf or a jaguar to fight an invisible threat, because these animals are fearless even in the face of terrible danger. And as a snake, the shaman could move between dimensions, because a snake is known to swim through water, it can climb trees, it can live in the utter darkness of caves, and it can even wriggle across fire and move across a deadly swamp. So it's thought that it could move across dimensions. And as for a cat, even a domestic cat, well, the shaman, if he turns into a cat, might be able to pass beyond the boundaries of unseen dimensions, because cats are believed to pass through walls. and the shaman as a cat would be able to view intangibles that are too subtle for the human eye. Often, the shape-shifting experience will occur at a festival or a special ceremonial time of the year, and it will be attended by fasting followed by feasting, vigils followed by parties, rapturous dancing, ceremonial singing, and often plenty of mayhem and crazy antics, and there will be psychoactive substances and alcohol being used. It will involve the entire tribe, and the tribe will witness the shapeshift, the magic, as it happens, and it's an important shared event for the whole tribe. It strengthens and it fosters faith in the shaman's powers, and it intensifies and enhances tribal traditions and doctrines. So think about using this type of what I call ritualistic temporary therianthropy in your next fantasy tale, and please let me know if you've used a shaman in your project or if you've used any ritualistic temporary therianthropy in your stories. Tweet me at Neil Mack, Neilmach. But I also want to add a few words about otherkin, Otherkin, and the roots of furry fandom. Some ancient cultures believe there is an animal counterpart to every human person. We often say, don't we, "Don't be such a greedy pig," or "He's such a stubborn ass," or "She can be a real bitch." So the concept is not as far-fetched as you might imagine. While an experienced shaman will acquire the spiritual attributes of the various beasts, like I've just explained, through ceremonies and dances and trances and the use of psychoactive substances, there is a suggestion that everyone, yes, everyone, even you and I, might be able to harness and tap into their animal counterpart. We find stories of humans descending from animals in many oral traditions, and they're often, I think, form part of the important tribal or clan history. And even in modern societies, we are distinguished, some of us, or perhaps caricatured, though not always in a flattering way, by our animal counterparts. So, for example, the bulldog is often used to represent the British, and the bear represents the Russians, and so on. So it might be possible for each of us to transform into the animal of our clan. So, for example, indigenous North American traditions suggest that some tribes might have bears as ancestors, so tribe members would be able to tap into their bear. And in Turkic mythology, some tribes claim wolf ancestry, so tribe members there would be able to tap into their wolf. The otherkin are these same types of people, but they're a subculture that identifies as not wholly human because they access their animal inner selves. Some otherkin believe that their beast identity is derived from reincarnation, while others claim direct ancestry, such as the Turkic people that I just mentioned, while others still simply claim a metaphorical connection, in other words, hidden similarities with their animal of choice, or they enjoy the role-playing aspect of becoming their chosen animal because they feel a special affinity with it. And for some, the sense of confinement and restraint when they are bound inside their animal identity is an exciting turn-on. If you've ever compared yourself to the traits of your astrological zodiac sign, in other words, if you've ever compared yourself to a lion or a ram or a crab, etc., or you've ever thought that your Chinese lunar animal perfectly describes you as a person, you might think that you're a tiger or a rabbit or a dragon, then you will have unknowingly placed yourself in this same group. You invoked an anthropomorphic avatar that you connected or sympathised with. Though, I ought to add that some otherkin folk do self-identify with entirely mythical creatures such as angels and demons and elves and fairies and even extraterrestrials and cartoon characters. But if you ever thought to yourself, "Oh yes, I'm proud like a lion, I hide like a crab," if you've done any of those things and you've associated yourself with your zodiacal sign, then you've become a little bit otherkin. Now, some other members of the otherkin community will claim to shapeshift mentally and or astrally into their chosen beast. And I think this suggests that they experience a sense of alternate being while they're shifted into their chosen form. And they experience this sense of alternate being even though they haven't actually changed physicality, although they might wear a mask or a very simple costume. And I've seen quite a few just stick on ears. If you look on social media, you'll see that some people just have stick on ears, and this is enough for them to experience a sense of alternate being. This light role-playing version of the otherkin phenomena is known as furry fandom. Cat girls and cat boys are the most prolific identities in the furry fandom subculture, although we've also seen bunny girls, and also fox folk, dog folk and wolf folk are quite common sights on social networks. So there's another perspective on therianthropy or shapeshifting that you might want to explore further in your fantasy writing. Let me know if you have any tips, let me know if you've got any advice or suggestions about what I've just been talking about, and definitely let me know if you've written a story which involves furry fandom or otherkin or just shapeshifting generally. Let me know at Neilmach, Neilmach, all one word. Good luck with your fantasy creations, and I'll see you again next week.